Hello everyone. The topic for the essay is just because you have a choice, it does not mean that any of them has to be right. Just because you have a choice, it does not mean that any of them has to be right. It's by Norton Juster. So let's start the essay without wasting time. We started with a quote from Nelson Mandela. This the essay credit goes to a very good source, and we'll discuss through some other examples also. So this topic is very important. That's why I have picked up this one. So Nelson Mandela says that may your choice reflect your hopes, not your fears. May your choices reflect your hopes, but not your fears. It's by Nelson Mandela. So a choice is the act of selecting something from a range of possibilities is one of your options. So আমি কেতিয়া choice কৰো? Choice আমি তেতিয়া কৰো যেতিয়া আমাৰ ওচৰত এটাতকৈ অধিক option থাকিব. If we'll have more than one option, then only we'll go for choice, right? Then choice may also mean that something has been carefully chosen. Existence of choices does not mean that all the choices are legally right or socially acceptable. Existing of choices does not assure your righteousness. If something has been asked to do it, it does not mean that it is right. If Are you getting my point? That if choices are there, then it is okay that you can choose any one of them, but it does not mean that all those options are correct or legally right or socially acceptable. They may not be socially acceptable. Suppose you will have been given by some decade two options: go and rob the bank. Second options: kill yourself. Then what you will do? Only these two options are given. You have to select one of them. In the other options, you will find that killing yourself may be not a good choice for you. Then although the ethically wrong one, first one is ethically wrong, and of course you should not support that to rob a bank or like that. But on the compulsion, you might be choosing the first one. So this is a good example that choices are there, but that doesn't mean that they are legally right or socially acceptable. And also, existence of choices does not assure your righteousness. If someone has been asked to do it, does not mean that it is right. If something was done according to the wishes of others, then it cannot be claimed that you are not guilty because someone else has asked to do so. তেনেকে আমি এটা ক'ব পাৰো, we can say like that, yes, it is not my choice, I have been asked to do so, that's why I did it. So that is also not right. It doesn't mean that you are not guilty. Concerns related to the right or wrong are independent of virtue or wishes. Remember, this is a very important line. Concerns related to right or wrong are independent of virtue or wishes. Something is absolute in this world, and no negotiation is possible regarding such kinds of things. Moving from one choice to other choices is your discretion, but its righteousness or wrongness sometimes depend on your act. And it means the choice is neutral. You have to prove that the choice you made is right. In some other circumstances, the right or wrong is predetermined. It is absolute, so you cannot negotiate it. The restored gospel of Jesus Christ provides a cohesive response to the claims of righteousness and wrong. The fundamental idea that promotes harmony and joy is generally considered as the path of righteousness. The fundamental idea that promotes the harmony and joy is generally considered as the path of righteousness. So in this paragraph, we are just focusing to define that The choice you have made may not be righteous or may not be legally or socially right, but still you are making that choice, maybe because of compulsion. But sometimes you may say that I have been asked to do so, that's why I have chosen that. That is also not means right. You cannot say that you are not guilty because you have made that because of others' choice. So it is actually kind of what virtue, right? That right and wrong are independent of. Now, civil servants have fundamental characteristics such as, patriotism, neutrality, and rationality, hard work, honesty, and transparency, integrity. These are the civil servants' characteristics, fundamental characteristics: patriotism, neutrality, rationality, hard work, honesty, transparency, integrity. Now, a civil servant must have to make decisions according to the pre-existing circumstances to solve the issues of the people without any fear. Now, the ability to make appropriate choices is critical for survival. In order to choose the optimum course of action, the successful decision making involves the integration of sensory information, motivational states, and probable consequence. See, this is a very important fact, that is what we are discussing, that in order to choose the optimum course of action, successful decision making will involve the integration of sensory information, secondly motivational state, and thirdly what will be the probable consequences. As a civil servant, you have to have that kind of or that level of decision making. A civil servant has to make decisions not just for sake, but he has to prove that his decision is right, because a wrong decision can destroy several lives and for their futures. So again, a very important line: a civil servant has to make decision not just for sake, but he has to prove that if his decision is right. Otherwise, if he will make some wrong decision, then that may take several lives being destroyed and also their future. So a person with a huge responsibility cannot rely on circumstances for decision making. He cannot just watch the right time to make an appropriate decision. He has to make a decision and choose the steps to implement his decision irrespective of the circumstantial constraints. Now, due to the fundamental characteristics of fearlessness, the civil services in India is considered as steel frame of India. So you have, if you are a person of means huge responsibility, you should not wait for good means some kind of circumstances on the based on which you will take that decision. You have to take the decision. You have to choose the steps to implement your decision irrespective of those constraints. So that's why the fundamental characteristics of our civil services, civil servant, is fearlessness. Means this fearlessness should be there in the civil services in India. That's why we consider the civil services in India as steel frame of India. So I'm repeating again, because of the characteristics that civil services should have, the fearlessness characteristics, they are considered as steel frame of India. Now, a civil servant has to make the best choices out of several choices fearlessly. After taking decisions, he has to strive hard to prove it right and to implement it for the welfare of the society. Now, bureaucratic process is prone to criticism, obviously, and is equated with duplication, arbitrary decision making, and inefficiency. Whatever the decision you will make, there may be a section of the society who will criticize your process, your decision. So that's why it is said that the bureaucracy process is prone to criticism and is equipped with duplication, arbitrary decision making, and inefficiency. Now, the underlying causes may be inefficiency of the entire system, but the responsibility lies on the civil servant or on the bureaucrats. It may be true that because of the entire system, these things are going in some wrong direction, but the responsibility will come on upon the bureaucrats. So accountability always comes to the head who takes the decision. So civil servants cannot claim that he is not guilty of the adversity, which is the outcome of his decision. He has to means take the responsibility of these outcomes. The decision making or making choices are physiological aspects of life, which are hugely or highly influenced by the personal thought process and existing circumstances and conscience of the individual. Now, possessing the power of choose is not necessarily a good thing always. When we must choose between course of actions, we typically also assume some of the responsibility for our decisions. Nothing is more difficult and therefore more precious than to be able to decide, by Napoleon Bonaparte. So Napoleon said that nothing is more difficult and more precious, therefore more precious. Nothing is more difficult and therefore more precious than to be able to decide. Now, if we talk about the world history in the late 18th century, France was a country in turmoil. This turmoil and the resulting power vacuum presented an opportunity to Napoleon, who by all accounts was a shrewd opportunities in his quest for power. He was keenly aware of the opportunity of how being on the winning side would benefit him in his quest for power. Napoleon carefully analyzed possible scenarios to develop the best strategy to further his goals. In successfully dispersing the insurrection, Napoleon became a hero to everyday French citizens looking for change and tired of the bloodshed. The Battle of Nile in August 1798 is considered to be Napoleon's first big mistake. He quit learning from the past in order to direct the future and started making impulsive and emotion-based decisions. So this is an example. Now, the life of an individual, either personal or professional, and is full of right and wrong decision. If a person makes the right decision, he enjoys, and if the decision goes wrong, then he has to face adversities. Now, the crux of life is just to make decision. Making decision or choices should be based on awareness, knowledge, and conscience. Remember, this should be the framework for everyone, that making decision or choices should not be random. This should be based on awareness, knowledge, and conscience. Decision should not be impulsive and emotion based, that because of some emotion, if you are taking the decision, or because of some impulsion you are taking the decision, you cannot expect a good result of it. The decision should be based on awareness, knowledge, and conscience. A man is but the product of his thoughts. What he thinks, he becomes. Very, very popular quote by Mahatma Gandhi ji. He said that a man is but the product of his own thoughts, product of his thoughts. What he thinks, he becomes. So an individual's thought process shapes his or her personality. The guiding force that determines an individual's future course of action is how course of action is his own thinking. The future of an individual is determined by the current course of activity. So an individual's thought process always shapes his or her personality. So it is his thought process which is going to provide some kind of direction to his personality, provide some kind of shapes to his personality. So the guiding force which determines an individual future course of action is his own thinking. The future of an individual is determined by their current course of activity. Everything is based on the decision or choices that a person makes. Thoughts may be constructive and maybe destructive, good, maybe bad. What we choose to think about shapes who we are. So, what we choose to think about shapes who we are. Mahatma Gandhi described how his upbringing, experiences, and unwavering principles influence his thinking of in his book, his way of thinking in his book, My Experiments with Truth. This finally facilitates decision making. Mahatma Gandhi also says that a person's decision and behaviors both strongly impacted by their cognitive processes. So, thoughts may be constructive or destructive, good or bad, but this will shape us. So Mahatma Gandhi says that his upbringings and experiences and unwavering principles, they influence his own way of thinking in his book My Experience with Truth. So finally it facilitates the decision making. He also says that the cognitive processes actually impact the thinking process. Now we the human beings are on the earth because we have chosen life. Life is an absolute thing in itself. So we cannot say anything about whether life is right or wrong. Utility of choices may be right or wrong, but it again depends on our choices, which usually we make in our life for the very survival of the life. So life gives us a choices at every time because we choose it to do so. Ultimately, life chooses that. So this is a kind of philosophical some terms that life is an absolute thing in itself. So we cannot say anything about whether life is right or wrong. But utility of choices may be right or wrong, but it again depends on our choices. What usually we make in life for the very survival of the life. Life gives us choices at every time, every turn, but because we choose it to do so. And ultimately, life chooses death. The hour of departure has arrived, and we go our separate ways. I to die, and you to live. Which of these two is better? Only God knows. This is a kind of emotional, or you can say the thought provoking quote by Socrates. So he said that during his time for execution, that hour of departure has arrived and we go our separate ways. I to die means my choice is to die, and you to live, your choice is to live. Now which one is better? That only God knows, Socrates. So with this quote we try to end this very essay. So this essay, kind of philosophical essay, we have gone through. We have related this particular quote of Norton Juster with the fundamental characteristics of a civil servant during the during the decision making process, during choosing some alternative. And we have gone through different kind of stages also, where actually it matters is that whatever you are choosing actually is a kind of reflection of your cognitive processes. So I hope that this discussion will help to write this essay in a proper way. We have discussed now the best thing is to write it. So whenever time you'll get some time, you may not write it, and you'll surprised to see that when you start writing after getting the concept or after getting some details about the essay topic, sentences will come to your mind automatically. So with this, I'm ending today's this session of essay. Very soon we'll meet in the next session. So very, very good night to you. Thank you. Bye-bye.